I paid $100 for all the parts inside of this gaming PC, but this did not go exactly as I was hoping. In this video I'll show you all the parts inside of it and how I got them, show you how to build it and test it out. So let's get started. Usually when you want to do a really low budget gaming PC, you buy an old workstation, put in a GPU and maybe a couple of upgrades. But I wanted to do it all custom this time. I had a budget of about 650 crowns or around $95. I did actually go over budget, so that's not great. The first PC parts in this build are the Asus H81MA motherboard, this i5 4460 CPU, an Intel stock cooler, a GTX 760 and 8GB of RAM. I paid 450 Danish crowns for this in my local market. I did kind of get scammed on this one though. I tested it out but it wouldn't boot, so I bought an old workstation to test. I'll get to that later. And found out that the CPU was dead. So not so great. The GTX 760 is actually a pretty okay card in the 200 crown price range. It can definitely play like 1080p low, 60 FPS Fortnite and other low end games. I went Nvidia because I know that sells. I was originally looking at GTX 660s and GTX 570s, so this is much better than that. I swapped out the CPU for the Intel i5 4570 in this workstation that I bought for 300 crowns. This did put me a lot over budget, but I'll not be including this because I'll be using this workstation for another build. The i5 4570 is a decent budget CPU that can handle a lot of low-end graphics cards like the GTX 760 that I put in this PC. So the CPU situation wasn't great, but now let's look at the hard drive. And yes, I got a hard drive, not a SSD, because I couldn't afford it in this budget. That's not very good to put only a hard drive in the system, but I'll just use a SSD next time. I got it at a thrift shop for only 25 Danish crowns, which is a steal considering that it's a whole terabyte. I did test it and it is actually as listed. The only downside about this is that it had the wrong partition type to install Windows on it, which is really weird. But I did fix that by installing Windows on a different drive I had laying around, changing the partition type from a program in Windows and then installing Windows on the original drive. Anyway, this was a really good deal. It's really hard to find a case for this low of a budget, but the one I found is the Salmon C9 Plus that I picked up for 70 crowns on Facebook Marketplace. And honestly, I think it's too much for this case. It was pretty dirty when getting it, so I cleaned it. It's missing all PCIe slots except for one. The hard drive base also looked really bad. It looks like a drive overheated or something. It does support ATX motherboards, so plenty for a micro ATX motherboard. It doesn't have a power supply shroud or tempered glass side panel, so it's not a great case, but hey, it works. The power supply I found for this is the Salmon CM700 GLX. This does have an 8-pin PCIe power connector, and I only paid 98 crowns including shipping. This is a crazy value. It's not on the PSU tier list, but you definitely can't get a C, B or A tier power supply for this low of a price. I also realized that I did not have a SATA cable or screws, so I bought those, which did put me over budget. Now that I've showed you all the parts, let's build it. Here it is. I don't think that looks great, but it's only $100. Let's test it. I tested Fortnite in 1080p high, it was really laggy, but I tried turning the settings down to medium. That didn't really work, so I turned it down to low. Here it was smooth and got a solid 60 FPS. In Apex Legends in 1080p I got 60 FPS, which is pretty great. In 3D Mark Time Spy I got a score of 1710. In Valorant in 1080p low I got 240 FPS, which is amazing. But I'm just using the demo without actually playing the game that much, so I don't really know what it is, so I didn't include that benchmark in my listing. But speaking of my listing, this is my listing, and it took a long time to sell. In total 26 days, and it took 17 days to find parts, and lastly 7 days to troubleshoot. In total 50 days for this PC. I really enjoy flipping PCs, and I'm currently working on the next PC, so if you wanna see that, subscribe. Here's the total for all parts inside of this gaming PC, and it comes out to 737 crowns, and I sold it for 900 crowns, leaving me with a profit of 163 crowns, which is definitely not a lot. That was my $100 gaming PC. If you like this PC, leave a like, or if you want to see more, subscribe.